The words cut through Kira like rusted blades, sharper than any weapon she had ever trained with, more devastating than the losses she had endured in battle. "Beast," they hissed, the human villagers pointing at her as she walked through the marketplace, her small frame barely 5 feet tall, somehow still too monstrous for their eyes. "Unnatural thing. Green-skinned demon." She kept her head down, her fingers clutching the few copper coins she had earned from chopping wood at the edge of their settlement, knowing that even this meager acceptance could vanish like morning frost. Kira had been called many things in her 18 years of life. Too small by her own Orc clan, who had looked at her diminutive stature with disappointment and barely concealed disgust. Too weak to be a proper warrior, they said, despite the fact that she could swing an axe with precision that most of her larger kin lacked. Her tusks were smaller than average, barely protruding past her lower lip, and her build, while muscular and strong, was compact in a way that made the other orcs sneer. When she had been cast out 3 months ago for defending a human child who had wandered too close to their territory, she had almost felt relief. Almost. The frontier village of Millwood had reluctantly allowed her to remain on its outskirts, performing tasks that no one else wanted. She slept in a hastily constructed lean-to near the forest edge, ate what she could forage or afford with her pittance of earnings, and endured the constant barrage of hatred that followed her every movement. Today had been worse than usual. A traveling merchant had arrived with stories of orc raids to the north, and the villagers' fear had curdled into fresh venom directed at the only orc within reach. "You should leave before someone decides to do something about you," the baker's wife had said that morning, her voice cold as winter stone. "We do not want your kind here." Kira had nodded, taken her small loaf of stale bread and walked away. What else could she do? Fight back and prove them right. Beg and show weakness. She had learned that silence was her only shield, though it protected nothing. The late autumn sun was setting as she made her way back to her shelter, the forest shadows stretching long and dark across the dirt road. She was so focused on her own misery that she almost missed the figure lying in the underbrush just off the path. Almost. Her orc senses, keener than human ones, caught the scent of blood and the faint sound of labored breathing. Kira froze, her body tensing. This could be a trap. The villagers might have set this up to give them an excuse to drive her away or worse. But as she stood there, indecision warring with instinct, the figure groaned and she heard words rasped through obvious pain. "Help, please." Despite every rational thought screaming at her to walk away, Kira pushed through the brush and found a human man, probably in his mid-20s, lying on his side with blood seeping from wounds across his chest and leg. His clothes marked him as a traveler, perhaps a merchant or craftsman, and his pack lay torn open nearby, contents scattered. Bandits, she guessed, or wild animals. His face was pale, lips tinged blue, and his eyes a striking gray-green focused on her with difficulty. Those eyes widened when they registered what she was, an orc. Kira waited for the fear, the rejection, the curses. Instead, the man simply whispered again, "Please, help me." She should have walked away. Should have left him there and saved herself the inevitable accusation that would come when he was found, and she was blamed. But Kira had never been good at doing what she should. With a grunt of effort, she managed to get the man onto her back. He was tall and solid, probably 6 feet, and even her strength was tested by his weight combined with his inability to help much. She could not take him to the village. They would assume she had attacked him. Instead, she carried him to her lean-to, laying him as gently as she could on the pile of furs that served as her bed. The wounds were serious but not immediately fatal if treated properly. Kira had learned field medicine from her clan's healers before her exile, knowledge that had seemed useless until this moment. She built up her small fire, heated water in her battered pot, and began to clean the injuries. The man drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally groaning but never pulling away from her ministrations. When she had to stitch the deepest cut on his chest, he bit down on a leather strap she offered and endured it with only muffled sounds of pain. "My name is Bennett," he managed to say when the worst was over, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bennett Varden." "Kira," she replied, not expecting him to care but feeling the need to offer it anyway. "Rest now, you have lost much blood. You saved me." His eyes tried to focus on her face. "Thank you." The words struck her harder than any insult the villagers had thrown. When was the last time anyone had thanked her for anything? When had anyone looked at her with something other than fear or contempt? She turned away, busying herself with cleaning her tools, and muttered, "Sleep. We will see if you survive the night." He did survive the night, and the next one, and the one after that. Bennett proved to be tougher than he looked, his body fighting off infection with a determination that impressed Kira despite herself. As he slowly regained strength, they began to talk. At first, it was simple exchanges, questions about water, food, comfort. But gradually, the conversations deepened. Bennett was a carpenter, he told her, traveling from village to village to offer his skills. He had been making his way to Millwood when he had been attacked by bandits who wanted his tools and coin. They had taken both and left him for dead. "You are lucky I found you," Kira said, stirring the rabbit stew she had made. Hunting was one skill her small size actually helped with. She could move through the forest more quietly than her larger kin. "Lucky is one word for it," Bennett agreed, propped up against the wall of the lean-to with furs wrapped around him. "Blessed might be another. The gods sent me an angel even if she has green skin and tusks." Kira nearly dropped her spoon. "I am no angel. The villagers call me beast, monster, demon. Choose whichever you prefer." "I prefer to choose my own words, thank you." Bennett's tone was mild but firm. "You saved my life at great risk to yourself. You have cared for me with skill and gentleness. Those are not the actions of a monster." She said nothing, ladling stew into a wooden bowl for him. Compliments made her uncomfortable, perhaps because she had received so few of them in her life. Bennett ate with obvious pleasure, and she felt a small warmth in her chest at his appreciation. It was dangerous, she knew, this growing attachment to his presence. He would heal and leave, and she would be alone again. Better to keep her distance emotionally even as she tended to him physically. But Bennett made keeping distance difficult. He asked about her life, and despite her better judgment, Kira found herself answering. She told him about being cast out for showing mercy to a human child, about the scorn of her own people and the hatred of his. She spoke of her struggles to survive, her loneliness, the constant weight of being unwanted everywhere she went. Bennett listened with an intensity that made her nervous, his gray-green eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I am sorry," he said simply. "You deserved better from both our peoples." "Deserving means nothing," Kira replied, harsher than she intended. "The world gives what it gives. We endure or we do not." "Is that really what you believe? That we are just meant to endure whatever cruelty comes our way?" Kira stirred the fire, watching sparks rise into the darkening sky. "What else is there? Fighting back, changing things, making a different choice than the one that was made before." Bennett shifted, wincing slightly at the pull on his healing wounds. "You chose to save me when you could have walked past. That was not endurance, that was defiance of what the world told you to do." The thought unsettled her, so she changed the subject, asking Bennett about his work, his travels, anything other than philosophy that made her chest feel too tight. He allowed the deflection, perhaps sensing her discomfort, and spoke instead of the villages he had visited, the things he had built, the satisfaction of creating something useful with his hands. "I would like to build you a proper shelter," he said after a while. "This lean-to is barely adequate. With winter coming, you will need something better." "You are injured," Kira pointed out, "and when you are healed, you will leave. You have no reason to waste effort on me." "Maybe I will leave," Bennett conceded, "or maybe I will stay. Either way, I would like to repay your kindness." "Will you let me?" She wanted to refuse. Accepting help felt like weakness, like admitting she could not manage alone. But the practical part of her mind recognized that he was right. Winter on the frontier was brutal, and her current shelter would not protect her from the worst of it. Finally, she gave a curt nod. "If you wish to waste your time, I will not stop you." Bennett smiled, and it transformed his face from merely pleasant to genuinely handsome. Kira looked away quickly, disturbed by the flutter in her stomach. She was not some foolish girl to be swayed by a pretty face and kind words. She was a survivor, hardened by rejection and loss. This human was temporary, a brief interruption in her solitary existence. She needed to remember that. Over the following week, Bennett regained more of his strength, though he tired easily and still could not put full weight on his injured leg. Kira continued to hunt and forage while he rested, and in the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. She learned that he had lost his family to illness 3 years prior, that he had taken up traveling to escape the memories of his empty house, that he found peace in the rhythm of carpentry work and the gratitude of those he helped. "You never want to settle somewhere?" Kira asked one evening. "Find a wife, start a new family." Bennett stared into the flames, his expression distant. "I thought I did once. Was even courting a woman in a village 2 days north of here, but she wanted me to give up traveling to stay and be a proper village husband. I was not ready for that. Maybe I am too restless, too damaged by loss, or maybe I just had not found the right reason to stay anywhere." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with something Kira did not want to examine too closely. She excused herself to check on her snares, needing distance from the suddenly too intimate atmosphere of the firelight. When she returned an hour later with 2 rabbits, Bennett had managed to hobble over to where he had sketched out plans for the new shelter in the dirt. He looked up at her approach, his face bright with excitement despite the obvious pain the movement had cost him. "I have been thinking," he said. "If we build here, using these trees as support posts, we can create a structure that will hold heat better and keep out wind and snow. I can show you techniques for chinking the walls that will make it nearly as warm as any village house." "We," Kira repeated, focusing on that word. Bennett paused, then nodded. "We, if you will have my help. I know I am still healing, but I can do some of the work, and I can teach you the skills to maintain and improve it even after. Well, for the future, after he left." That was what he meant, even if he was too kind to say it directly. Kira knelt beside his sketches, studying them with a critical eye. She knew basic construction, but what he was proposing was far beyond her skills. It would be foolish to refuse such an offer out of pride. "Very well," she agreed. "We will build it together." They began the next day. Bennett could not do heavy labor yet, so he directed while Kira did the physical work of felling saplings, stripping bark, and digging post holes. She discovered that she enjoyed the process, the way something solid and real emerged from effort and planning. Bennett proved to be a patient teacher, explaining not just what to do but why, ensuring she understood the principles so she could handle repairs or modifications alone later. Working together created an easy camaraderie between them. Bennett would make jokes that surprised her into laughter, and she would respond with dry observations that made him grin. When she struggled with a particular joint that would not fit properly, he would hobble over and show her the trick of it, his hands guiding hers with a gentleness that made her pulse quicken. When he overdid it and aggravated his healing wounds, she would scold him and force him to rest, bringing him water and food while he grumbled about being coddled. It was during one of these enforced rest periods, nearly 2 weeks after she had found him, that Bennett asked the question she had been dreading. "Have you gone to the village since you brought me here?" Kira shook her head. "No need. I have enough supplies and the hunting has been good." "They will wonder what happened to you. They will be glad I am gone. Perhaps they think I finally took their advice and left the area." Bennett frowned. "You should not have to hide yourself away because of their prejudice. You have done nothing wrong. I exist. For some, that is wrong enough." Kira focused on the pot she was scrubbing, not wanting to see pity in his eyes. "It does not matter. I am used to it. It matters to me." The quiet intensity in his voice made her look up despite herself. "You matter to me." The words settled over her like a physical weight. Kira set down the pot carefully, her hands suddenly unsteady. "Do not say things you do not mean." "I never do." Bennett held her gaze, his gray-green eyes serious. "These past 2 weeks with you have been. I cannot remember the last time I felt this content, this at peace." "You are remarkable, Kira. Your strength, your skill, your kindness, despite everything you have endured. I see you, and I wish everyone else could see what I see." Kira stood abruptly, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "You are grateful because I saved your life. That is all this is. When you are fully healed and you return to your travels, you will forget all about the strange little orc who patched you up." "Is that what you truly think?" Bennett struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on the walking stick she had carved for him. "That my regard for you is just gratitude? That I could forget you?" "Yes," she said, the word coming out harder than she intended. "Because that is what always happens. People tolerate me when they need something from me, and then I am disposable again. I am tired, Bennett. Tired of hoping for something different only to be disappointed. So please, let us just build your shelter and work together as friendly strangers and leave it at that." She walked away before he could respond, heading into the forest with her bow and quiver. The hunting was poor that afternoon, probably because she was too agitated to move quietly, and she returned empty-handed as dusk fell. Bennett had managed to add another support beam to the shelter frame in her absence, though she could see the strain on his face from the effort. They ate a quiet dinner of stored supplies, the easy atmosphere between them replaced by an awkward tension. Kira hated it, hated that she had created this distance, but she did not know how to bridge it without risking more pain. Finally, Bennett spoke. "I apologize if I made you uncomfortable." "That was not my intention." "You did not," Kira started, then stopped. Honesty seemed important suddenly. "You did, but not in the way you think. I am not good at this, at people caring about me or claiming to. Every time I have believed it before, I have been proven a fool." "I do not want to be a fool again." Bennett nodded slowly. "I understand, and I will not push you, but I need you to know that my words were true whether you believe them now or not. You are not disposable to me, Kira. You never could be." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. She managed a jerky nod and retreated to her sleeping furs, though sleep was long in coming that night. She lay awake, listening to Bennett's breathing from across the fire, and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake by keeping him at arm's length. What if he truly meant what he said? What if this could be something real? But the hopeful thoughts were always followed by darker ones, memories of rejection and cruelty. Reminders that someone like her, too small for orcs, too monstrous for humans, did not get happy endings. Better to protect herself now than suffer worse heartbreak later. The shelter took shape over the next week, a sturdy structure with walls, a proper roof, and even a small covered area for storing wood and supplies. Bennett's leg had healed enough for him to do more of the physical work, and Kira found herself watching him sometimes when he was focused on a task. The way his hands moved with practiced confidence over wood and tools. The concentration on his face as he measured and adjusted. The satisfaction in his expression when something fit together perfectly. He caught her staring once and smiled, that warm expression that did strange things to her insides. "See something interesting?" Kira turned away quickly. "Just making sure you are doing it correctly. I will have to live here after all. MMHMM." The amusement in his voice suggested he did not believe her excuse, but he mercifully did not push. They were finishing the door, Bennett showing her how to hang it properly on its hinges, when they heard voices approaching through the forest. Kira tensed immediately, her hand going to the knife at her belt. Bennett straightened, his expression shifting from relaxed to alert. 3 men emerged from the tree line, villagers from Millwood that Kira recognized. The leader was Garrett, the blacksmith's son, a man who had always looked at her with particular disdain. His companions were 2 of his friends, both carrying clubs. All 3 stopped when they saw Bennett, surprise crossing their faces. "Bennett Varden," Garrett said. "We heard you had been killed by bandits on the road. Your pack was found torn apart nearly 3 weeks back." "The bandits left me for dead, but I survived," Bennett replied, his tone even but wary. "I have been recovering here." Garrett's eyes shifted to Kira and his expression hardened. "With the orc, of course. Did she nurse you back to health, or is this some kind of trick?" "Are you here against your will?" "Kira saved my life," Bennett said firmly. "I owe her everything. She has been nothing but kind and helpful, and I am here entirely by my own choice." "She has bewitched you, then," one of the other men muttered. "Orc magic or tricks. You should come back to the village with us, get away from her influence." Kira felt her temper rising but forced it down. Losing control would only confirm their prejudices. Bennett, however, seemed to have no such compunction. "Bewitched?" His voice carried an edge that made all 3 men take a step back. "The only thing that has influenced me is witnessing genuine goodness and courage. Kira found me dying, brought me to her shelter, tended my wounds with skill that saved my life, shared her supplies when she had little to spare, and asked nothing in return. What have any of you done that compares to that?" Garrett's face reddened. "She is an orc. You cannot trust them. They are violent, dangerous. She is standing right here," Kira interjected coldly. "If you are going to insult me, at least have the courage to address me directly." The 3 men looked at her with a mixture of anger and unease. Garrett rallied first. "Fine. You should not be here, orc. You are not welcome near our village. We have tolerated you too long already." "This is not your village," Bennett said before Kira could respond. "This is the forest, free land. She has as much right to be here as anyone. Taking her side, are you? Maybe you have been among monsters too long. Come back with us, Varden, before you forget what you are." "I know exactly what I am," Bennett replied, his voice hard as iron. "I am a man who recognizes honor and decency when he sees it, regardless of what skin it comes in. Now, unless you have actual business here, I suggest you leave. We have work to finish." The standoff lasted several long heartbeats. Finally, Garrett spat on the ground and turned away. "Your choice, Carpenter, but do not come crying to us when she turns on you like her kind always does." The 3 men disappeared back into the forest, their muttered complaints fading with distance. Kira released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Bennett turned to her, his expression troubled. "I am sorry about that. They had no right, they had every right," Kira interrupted tiredly. This is their territory, their people. I am the interloper. You defended me, and I am grateful, but do not pretend that will change anything. If anything, you have probably just made them more hostile toward both of us. I do not care. Bennett moved closer, his gaze intense. Let them be hostile. I will not stand by and let them treat you like something less than a person. You deserve better, Kira. You deserve respect and kindness and a place to call home without fear. Deserving means nothing, she repeated, but the words came out weaker than before. The world does not care what we deserve. Then we make it care. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His skin was warm against hers, rough with calluses from his work. We make our own world where you are valued as you should be. Kira stared at their joined hands, emotions warring inside her. Hope, fear, longing, doubt all tangled together until she could not separate them. You make it sound simple. Not simple, but possible if we are brave enough to try. She wanted to believe him. Looking into his earnest face, feeling the solid warmth of his hand around hers, she wanted to believe so desperately it hurt. But years of rejection and pain had taught her to be cautious, to protect herself first. I need to check my snares, she said quietly, gently pulling her hand free. We should have something fresh for dinner. Bennett's expression showed disappointment but understanding. All right, I will finish the door. Kira retreated into the forest, her hand still tingling from his touch. She was being a coward, she knew. Running from the possibility of something good because she was too afraid of being hurt again. But fear was not easily overcome, no matter how much she wished otherwise. That night, as they sat by the fire in the newly completed shelter, Bennett told her about his childhood. Growing up in a small village, learning carpentry from his father, the simple joys of creating things and the pride in a job well done. His voice was full of warmth and nostalgia, and Kira found herself drawn into his stories, laughing at the mishaps and misadventures of a young boy learning his trade. What about you? Bennett asked eventually. What was your childhood like? Kira hesitated. She had never spoken much about her early years, finding the memories painful. But something about the quiet safety of the shelter and Bennett's genuine interest loosened her tongue. Lonely, mostly, she admitted. I was always smaller than the others, always struggling to prove I was strong enough, tough enough. My mother died when I was young, and my father. He tried, I think, but he did not know what to do with a daughter who did not fit the clan's expectations. He remarried when I was 10, and my stepmother made it clear I was an embarrassment to the family. Too small, too soft-hearted, too different. That must have been incredibly difficult, Bennett said gently. It taught me to rely on myself, to not expect warmth or acceptance from others. Kira poked at the fire, watching embers drift upward. When I was cast out, part of me was relieved. At least I did not have to keep trying to be something I was not, but being alone is. She trailed off, not sure how to put the feeling into words. Hard in a different way, Bennett finished. I understand. After my family died, I threw myself into work and travel because being still meant feeling the emptiness. But loneliness follows you no matter how far you walk. They sat in comfortable silence after that, both lost in their own thoughts. When Kira finally settled into her furs to sleep, she felt something shift inside her. Not quite trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of it. The tiniest crack in the walls she had built around her heart. The weather turned colder as October gave way to November. The first snow fell on a gray morning, light flakes that melted as soon as they touched the ground. Bennett had fully recovered from his injuries by now, his limp almost entirely gone and his strength returned. Kira knew that any day he would announce his intention to leave, to return to his traveling life. The thought made her chest ache in a way she refused to examine too closely. But Bennett showed no signs of leaving. Instead, he threw himself into improving the shelter, further building a proper bed frame, crafting storage shelves, even starting work on a small workshop area where he could practice his carpentry. When Kira questioned him about it, he simply said that winter was coming and it made sense to wait for better weather before traveling again. The excuse was thin and they both knew it, but Kira did not push. She was too selfishly glad of his continued presence, too unwilling to face the loneliness that would return when he left. They fell into a domestic rhythm that felt both foreign and natural to Kira. Mornings were spent on practical tasks, gathering firewood, checking snares, hunting when the traps proved insufficient. Afternoons found Bennett at his woodworking while Kira practiced skills she had never had time to develop before sewing, preserving food, even some basic cooking beyond the simple camp meals she had survived on previously. Evenings were her favorite time. They would sit together by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes working on individual projects in companionable silence. Bennett was teaching her to carve, and she found she had a knack for it, her small hands surprisingly deft at the delicate work. He praised her progress genuinely, and the warmth of his approval became something she craved more than she wanted to admit. One particularly cold night, they sat close to the fire, Bennett carving a set of wooden bowls while Kira worked on her own project, a small figure of a deer. Snow fell steadily outside, visible through the gaps around the door. "We should seal those gaps better," Bennett observed. "The wind is getting through." "I like hearing the snow," Kira said. "It reminds me that we are protected from it, safe and warm while the world is cold." Bennett looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You should always be safe and warm, protected from cold and cruelty both." The words hung in the air between them. Kira set down her carving, her heart beginning to race. "Bennett, I know you do not want to hear this," he interrupted gently. "I know you are afraid of being hurt again, but I cannot keep pretending that what I feel for you is simple gratitude or friendship. It is more than that, Kira, so much more." "Please do not do this," she whispered, fear and longing warring in her chest. "You will leave eventually. Your wandering life, remember? You said yourself you were too restless to settle." "I said I had not found the right reason to stay anywhere," Bennett corrected. He set aside his own carving and turned to face her fully. "But I have found it now, found her. You are my reason, Kira. You are what makes this place home." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "I am an orc. You are human. Our peoples hate each other. Even if you mean what you say now, eventually you will realize what a mistake this is. What people will think, what they will say, let them say whatever they want." Bennett reached out and cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I am done living for other people's approval. I am done pretending I do not feel what I feel. I love you, Kira. Your strength, your courage, your kindness, despite everything that has tried to break you. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you scrunch your nose when you are concentrating on your carving, the way you hunt and build and survive against all odds. I love all of it. I love you." The tears spilled over then, tracking down her green skin. "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I am so afraid of believing you, of letting myself hope, only to lose it all. I know." Bennett pulled her close and she went, collapsing against his chest as sobs shook her body. "I know, and I cannot promise that nothing will ever go wrong or that this will be easy. But I can promise that I am not going anywhere. I am staying, Kira, here with you for as long as you will have me." She clung to him, crying out years of loneliness and pain and desperate hope. Bennett held her through it all, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances that gradually penetrated her anguish. When the storm of emotion finally passed, she pulled back slightly to look at him. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have been trying not to, but I do. So much it terrifies me." Bennett smiled, that warm expression that transformed his whole face. "Then be terrified with me. We will figure it out together." He kissed her then, soft and gentle and full of promise. Kira had never been kissed before, had never imagined anyone would want to kiss her. But Bennett's lips against hers felt right in a way she could not explain, like a piece of herself she had not known was missing clicking into place. When they finally parted, both breathless, Kira rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" "Now, we keep living. Keep building our life together. The rest will sort itself out." It sounded too simple, too optimistic. But wrapped in Bennett's arms, listening to his steady heartbeat, Kira found herself believing it anyway. The next weeks passed in a haze of quiet happiness that Kira had never experienced before. Bennett was affectionate in ways that still sometimes startled her, casual touches as they worked, stolen kisses when they passed each other, holding her close at night as they slept. She was learning to accept and return the affection, though years of being untouched made it strange at first. They continued improving their home, making it more comfortable and secure. Bennett built a proper chimney to draw smoke better, crafted shutters for the windows, even started work on furniture beyond the basics. Kira hunted and trapped, her skills keeping them well supplied with meat and furs. Together they gathered and preserved enough food to see them through the winter, working as a team with practiced ease. But their bubble of happiness could not last forever. Reality intruded one afternoon when Garrett and 4 other men from Millwood appeared at their door, armed and angry. "We warned you, Varden," Garrett said without preamble. "We gave you a chance to come back to civilization. But you have chosen to stay with this creature, to live in sin and shame with an orc. The village council has decided you are no longer welcome in Millwood or any of the settlements in the region." Bennett's expression hardened. "I do not recall asking for the village's permission or approval. And Kira is not a creature, she is the woman I love, and she has more honor and decency than all of you combined." One of the other men spat. "Unnatural. A human lying with an orc. It is disgusting, an abomination." Kira felt her temper snap. "You speak of abomination. You, who would condemn someone for showing kindness, who would cast out one of your own for daring to care about someone different from himself. Look to yourselves before you judge others." "Shut your mouth, beast," Garrett snarled. "You have corrupted this man with your wiles, turned him against his own people. Well, we are done tolerating it. You have 2 choices, Varden. Send her away and beg the council for forgiveness, or face banishment alongside her." Bennett laughed, sharp and bitter. "That is your idea of a choice. Then I choose Kira. I choose love over your hatred, compassion over your cruelty. Banish me if you must. I want nothing to do with people who would demand I abandon the woman I love." The 5 men looked shocked, as if they had truly expected Bennett to cave to their ultimatum. Garrett recovered first, his face flushing with rage. "So be it. You are hereby declared outcast from Millwood and all allied settlements. Any who give you aid or comfort will face the same judgment. And you, orc, if you are seen within a mile of our borders, you will be killed on sight." "Your borders," Kira repeated coldly, "seem to expand whenever it is convenient for you. This land was here long before your village, and it will be here long after. You have no authority over it or us." "We have the authority of numbers and steel," one of the other men growled. "Push us too far, and you will learn what that means." Bennett stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Kira. "Is that a threat? Are you really so consumed by fear and ignorance that you would consider violence against two people who have done nothing but try to live in peace? Peace, Garrett sneered. There can be no peace between humans and orcs. History has taught us that. Your grandfather fought in the Orc Wars, Varden. He would be ashamed to see you now bedding the enemy. My grandfather would be ashamed of you, Bennett shot back. He fought so that people could live free from tyranny and fear. You embody everything he stood against. The argument might have escalated into actual violence if not for a new voice cutting through the tension. Enough. Everyone turned to see an older woman emerging from the forest, leaning on a walking stick. Kira recognized her as Elder Miriam, one of the village senior council members, and a woman known for her wisdom if not always her warmth. Elder Miriam, Garrett said, surprise evident in his voice. We did not expect you to come personally. Clearly, the old woman replied dryly. Or you might have remembered that threatening violence is against our own laws, regardless of the target. Stand down, all of you. The 5 men reluctantly stepped back, though their hands remained on their weapons. Elder Miriam approached Bennett and Kira, studying them both with sharp blue eyes. I will admit, she said after a long moment, when I heard the rumors, I did not believe them. Bennett Varden, the skilled carpenter who has helped half the region with his work, choosing an orc for a partner, it seemed too strange to be true. Yet here you are. Here I am, Bennett agreed, his voice calm but firm, and here I will stay, even knowing what it will cost you. The banishment is real, boy. You will be turned away from every human settlement within 2 weeks' travel. Your work, your connections, your people all gone. They stopped being my people when they demanded I choose between them and the woman I love. Bennett took Kira's hand, lacing their fingers together. I made my choice and I do not regret it. Elder Miriam's gaze shifted to Kira. And you, young orc, what do you have to say for yourself? Kira lifted her chin, refusing to be cowed. I say that I found a dying man and chose to save him rather than leave him to his fate. I say that I have harmed no one, threatened no one, asked nothing of your village except to be left in peace to survive. If that makes me worthy of death threats and banishment, then your justice is hollow indeed. The old woman's expression was unreadable. You speak well for someone who is supposed to be a savage beast. Tell me, how did you come to be exiled from your own clan? I defended a human child who wandered into our territory, Kira said. My people wanted to kill her as an example. I refused to allow it and helped her escape. For that crime, I was cast out. So you have been rejected by both sides for showing mercy and compassion. Elder Miriam shook her head slowly. What a damning statement on all of us. She turned to Garrett and his companions. Return to the village, I will handle this matter. But Elder, Garrett protested. That was not a request. Go. The 5 men exchanged uncertain glances but ultimately obeyed, disappearing back into the forest. When they were gone, Elder Miriam sighed and lowered herself carefully onto a stump near the shelter. I am too old for this much walking, she muttered. But I needed to see for myself what was happening here. She looked up at Bennett and Kira, who still stood hand in hand. Sit. Let us talk like civilized people. They sat, wary but willing to hear her out. Elder Miriam studied them both in silence for a long moment before speaking. I am not here to condemn you, she said finally. Nor am I here to give you my blessing. What I am here to do is tell you the truth of your situation. The village council is divided. Some, like Garrett and his father, want you both driven away or worse. They see your relationship as a threat, a violation of natural law. Others are more moderate, they do not approve but do not see the need for violence. And a few, a very few, wonder if perhaps we have all been too quick to judge. And where do you stand? Bennett asked. I stand in the place of experience and pragmatism, Elder Miriam replied. I have lived through the Orc Wars, boy. I have seen the worst of what both our peoples can do to each other. I have also seen in the years since that hatred and fear accomplish nothing but more suffering. If an orc and a human can find common ground, can care for each other despite everything working against them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That is either profound foolishness or profound hope. I have not decided which. Kira felt a flicker of something like hope herself. You are not here to force us apart. I am here to warn you of what you face, the old woman corrected. The banishment stands. The council will not reverse it, not with the current climate of fear. There have been raids to the north and people are scared. They need someone to blame, something to hate. You two make convenient targets. So we are to be sacrificed for the sake of their fear, Bennett said bitterly. You are to be the price of peace, as unfair as that is. Elder Miriam's expression softened slightly. But I am not without sympathy or resources. 2 days east of here, there is an old homestead that has been abandoned for years. The land is technically owned by the Crown, which means it belongs to no one in practice. If you were to settle there, you would be beyond the reach of Millwood's jurisdiction and far enough away to not provoke constant conflict. You are suggesting we leave, Kira said. I am suggesting you survive, Elder Miriam replied. What you have built here is admirable, but it is too close to the village. Tensions will only escalate. Take what you can carry, claim that homestead, and build your life there. It will not be easy. The land has gone wild and you will be isolated, but you will have a chance. Bennett and Kira exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Bennett turned back to the elder. We will consider your suggestion. Thank you for the information. Elder Miriam nodded and levered herself to her feet with a grunt of effort. One more thing. There is a trading post 3 days southwest, run by a man who cares more about coin than politics. If you need supplies you cannot make or forage, he will trade with you without asking questions. His name is Tobias, and you can tell him I sent you. Why are you helping us? Kira asked, confused by the old woman's unexpected assistance. Elder Miriam paused at the edge of the clearing. Because I am tired of fear ruling our decisions. Because I remember being young and in love and having the world tell me it was wrong. And because, perhaps, you two represent something better than the endless cycle of hatred and violence. Do not make me regret this kindness. She left without waiting for a response, disappearing into the forest as silently as she had come. Bennett and Kira sat in stunned silence for several minutes after she left. What do you think? Bennett asked finally. I think she is right, Kira said slowly. We cannot stay here. Garrett and his friends will keep pushing until something breaks. If we move further away, we have a chance at real peace. A homestead 2 days east, abandoned land that will need a lot of work to be livable again. We have both done harder things. Kira squeezed his hand. At least we would be doing it together. Bennett smiled and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Together, I like the sound of that. They spent the next 3 days preparing for the move. The shelter they had built with such care would have to be left behind, but they could take their tools, supplies, and the skills they had learned. Bennett carefully packed his carpentry equipment while Kira gathered their food stores and bundled furs for warmth. They worked with practiced efficiency, and Kira marveled at how natural it felt to plan a future with him. On the morning they were set to leave, they took one last look at the shelter that had been their home. Kira felt a pang of sadness at leaving it, but also a sense of anticipation. They were not running away, they were moving towards something better. The journey east was difficult but not unbearable. Bennett knew how to navigate by the sun and stars, and Kira's hunting skills kept them fed. They moved carefully, avoiding any signs of human habitation, and staying alert for dangers both natural and otherwise. They reached the homestead on the evening of the second day, just as Elder Miriam had predicted. The sight that greeted them was both daunting and promising. The original cabin still stood, though the roof had partially collapsed and the walls needed significant repair. The land around it had gone wild, but Kira could see evidence of old fields and garden plots beneath the overgrowth. A stream ran nearby, providing fresh water. "It needs work," Bennett said, his carpenter's eye assessing the damage. "Everything worth having needs work," Kira replied. "Can it be saved?" "Yes, it will take time and effort, but the bones are good. We can make this into a real home." They spent that first night in a makeshift camp near the cabin, too tired to do more than eat and sleep. But the next morning, they woke with purpose and began the work of reclaiming the homestead. The weeks that followed were exhausting but fulfilling. Bennett worked on the cabin itself, carefully replacing rotted logs, patching holes, and eventually rebuilding the roof entirely. Kira cleared land, establishing new garden plots for spring planting and improving the area around the cabin. Together they chinked walls, built furniture, and slowly transformed the derelict structure into a comfortable home. Winter arrived in full force as they worked, bringing snow and bitter cold. But the cabin, while still rough in places, was solid enough to protect them. They would huddle together for warmth at night, talking about their plans for spring, dreaming of the life they were building together. It was during one of these quiet evenings, snow falling heavy outside while they sat by the fire, that Bennett pulled out something from his pack. Kira watched curiously as he unwrapped a small carved box. "I have been working on this in secret," he admitted, looking almost nervous. "I wanted to wait for the right moment, but I think this is it." He opened the box to reveal 2 wooden rings, carved with intricate patterns of leaves and vines intertwining. They were beautiful, the work of hours of careful craftsmanship. "In my culture," Bennett said softly, "rings like these are exchanged when 2 people commit to spending their lives together. I know we do not have a priest or a formal ceremony, and I know that no one would recognize this as legitimate, but I wanted to ask you anyway." He took her hands in his. "Kira, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my family? Will you build this life with me, not just for now but forever?" Kira felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were tears of joy rather than pain. "Yes," she managed through the emotion clogging her throat. "Yes, absolutely yes." Bennett slipped one of the rings onto her finger and she did the same with his. They fit perfectly, as if made for them, which she realized they had been. He had carved them to match their hands exactly. "I love you," Bennett said, pulling her into his arms. "My wife, my Kira, my husband," she whispered back, testing the word. "I never thought I would have this, never thought anyone would want me like this." Then they were fools, all of them. "You are everything, Kira, everything I never knew I was searching for." They made love that night for the first time, gentle and awkward and perfect. Kira had no experience with such intimacy, and Bennett was patient, showing her pleasure and affection in equal measure. When they finally lay tangled together afterward, both breathless and happy, Kira felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "We are married now," she said softly. "Even if no one else recognizes it, we recognize it. That is all that matters." Bennett kissed her forehead. "You and me against the world for as long as we both live." "For as long as we both live," Kira agreed, and fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer and more loved than ever before in her life. Winter deepened, and they settled into their life as a married couple. The work on the homestead continued whenever weather permitted, and they grew closer with each passing day. They learned each other's habits, preferences, and quirks. Bennett discovered that Kira hummed while she worked, often songs from her childhood that she had not realized she remembered. Kira learned that Bennett talked to his tools while he worked, encouraging them like they were partners in the creation process. They also learned to navigate the more challenging aspects of their relationship. Kira still sometimes struggled with accepting affection, flinching away from touches when she was lost in old memories. Bennett had nightmares about losing his family, and Kira learned to hold him through them, offering comfort as he had offered her. They argued occasionally, usually over practical matters like how much firewood was enough or the best way to preserve food, but always managed to work through disagreements with patience and communication. One particularly cold night in January, they lay together under a pile of furs, listening to the wind howl outside their sturdy cabin. "Do you ever regret it?" Kira asked quietly. "Giving up your old life for me?" Bennett was silent for a moment, and she felt a flicker of fear that perhaps he did regret it. But when he spoke, his voice was firm and sure. "Never. Not for a single moment. My old life was hollow, Kira. I was running from pain and loneliness, filling the emptiness with work and movement. But with you, I have found purpose, joy, home. I would give up 100 old lives for this one with you." Kira turned in his arms to face him, searching his face in the firelight. "I feel the same. I was just surviving before, getting through each day without hope for anything better. You showed me what living could actually be, what love could be. I do not have pretty words to express it, but you are everything to me." "You do not need pretty words," Bennett said, kissing her gently. "You show me every day through your actions, your presence, the way you build this life with me. That is worth more than any poetry." They fell asleep holding each other, content in their little bubble of warmth and safety. Spring arrived with the melting of snow and the first green shoots pushing through the thawed earth. Bennett and Kira threw themselves into preparing for planting season, working the land that would provide their food for the coming year. It was hard work, made harder by the fact that much of the old fields had to be cleared of years of overgrowth, but they approached it together with determination. It was during this time that they had their first visitors. Kira spotted them approaching from a distance, 2 figures walking across the cleared land toward the cabin. She tensed immediately, hand going to the axe she kept nearby while working. "Bennett," she called, and he emerged from the cabin, following her gaze. As the figures drew closer, Kira realized with shock that they were orcs. A man and woman, both tall and powerfully built in the way of her people. Her first instinct was fear had her old clan tracked her down. But as they came within speaking range, the male orc raised his hand in a gesture of peace. "Greetings," he called out in the orcish tongue. "We mean no harm. We are travelers seeking shelter for the night and are willing to work or trade for the privilege." Kira responded in the same language, conscious of Bennett beside her not understanding the words. "This is my home. What brings orcs to human lands?" the female orc answered, her voice weary. "We seek a new life away from clan politics and endless feuding. We heard rumors of an orc living in peace among humans and hoped to find guidance or at least proof it was possible." "You heard about me?" Kira was stunned. "How?" "Stories travel," the male said. "Of a small female orc cast out for mercy who found a place to belong. Some call the stories lies. Others hope they are true." Bennett touched Kira's arm gently. "What are they saying?" She switched to the common tongue, translating the conversation. Bennett listened thoughtfully, then looked at the 2 orcs with a measuring gaze. "You are welcome to stay the night," he said carefully. "We have little to spare, but we can share what we have. Kira and I make our decisions together." Kira felt a rush of warmth at the casual way he included her in the decision, treating her as an equal partner. She nodded her agreement. "Come, we will talk more inside." The orcs introduced themselves as Thrak and Nara, a mated pair who had grown disillusioned with clan life and its constant warfare. They had heard whispers of Kira's story through the orc grapevine, a tale that had apparently grown in the telling, painting her as either a traitor or a pioneer depending on who was speaking. "We did not know if we would find you or just another empty rumor," Nara admitted over the simple meal Kira prepared. "But here you are, living in a human dwelling with a human mate. It is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Kira asked, curious despite herself. "Honestly, I expected either nothing or to find you living as a servant or slave to humans. This," Nara gestured around the cabin at the obvious care and comfort of the space. "This is something different. You are equals here." "We are," Bennett confirmed. "Kira is my wife in all the ways that matter. This is our home, built together." Thrak leaned forward, his expression intense. "How did you manage it? The prejudice from both sides, the difficulty of bridging two different worlds, how do you make it work?" Kira and Bennett exchanged glances, and she saw her own thoughtfulness reflected in his eyes. How did they make it work? They had never really analyzed it before. "Honestly," Kira said slowly, "I think we make it work by choosing each other every day. By communicating when things are hard instead of letting resentment build. By respecting each other's differences instead of trying to change them. And by remembering that we are on the same side, facing the world together. It is not always easy," Bennett added. "There are days when the isolation gets to us, when we miss having a community or fear what will happen if we are discovered. But we face those fears together, and that makes them bearable." Thrak and Nara stayed for 3 days, helping with the spring planting in exchange for food and shelter. Kira found herself enjoying the company, realizing how much she had missed having others to talk to beyond Bennett. The two orcs asked countless questions about how she and Bennett had met, fallen in love, and built their life together. In turn, they shared stories of their own struggles and their hopes for finding a place where they could live without constant conflict. On the morning they prepared to leave, Nara pulled Kira aside. "Thank you," the female orc said quietly, "for showing us that it is possible. Thrak and I will continue searching for our own place, but knowing that you have succeeded gives us hope." "Where will you go?" Kira asked. "Further east into the truly wild lands. Perhaps we can find somewhere remote enough that we can live without interference." Nara hesitated, then added, "If we succeed, if we establish ourselves somewhere safe, would you and your human be interested in knowing? In perhaps having neighbors, however distant?" The idea of having friends, of not being completely alone, made Kira's chest tight with unexpected emotion. "Yes. I would like that very much." They parted as friends, with Thrak and Nara promising to send word if they found a suitable place to settle. Bennett and Kira stood together watching them disappear into the distance. "You think they will make it?" Bennett asked. "I think they have a better chance than we did," Kira replied. "They have our example to learn from, and they have each other. That is enough to build on." Bennett pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "We have become an example, a story that gives others hope." "That is not something I expected, but I find I like it." "We are just living our lives," Kira protested. "Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes just existing, just refusing to give up on love and happiness, is an act of revolution." The words settled over Kira like a warm blanket. She had never thought of their life in those terms, but Bennett was right. By simply being together, by refusing to let prejudice and hatred dictate their choices, they were making a statement. They were proving that another way was possible. The rest of spring and into summer passed in productive labor. The garden they had planted flourished, providing fresh vegetables to supplement their diet of hunted game and foraged goods. Bennett expanded the cabin, adding a workshop where he could practice his carpentry, and began creating goods that they could potentially trade. Kira improved her hunting skills and started experimenting with tanning hides and curing meat, building up stores for the next winter. They were visited occasionally by other travelers, sometimes orcs seeking proof of Kira's story, sometimes humans who had heard rumors of a skilled carpenter living in the wild. Bennett always welcomed the human visitors cautiously, ready to defend Kira if necessary, but most were simply grateful for his skills and willing to trade fairly without comment on his orc wife. One memorable visit came from Elder Miriam herself, accompanied by a young human woman Kira did not recognize. The old woman looked around their improved homestead with obvious approval. "You have done well for yourselves," she observed. "Better than I expected, honestly." "We had good advice," Bennett said, offering her a seat. "Thank you for pointing us this direction. It has made all the difference." Elder Miriam settled herself with a sigh of relief. "I am too old for this much travel, but I wanted to see how you fared, and I wanted to introduce you to someone." She gestured to the young woman. "This is my granddaughter, Olivia. She has been learning healing arts from me and is interested in expanding her knowledge." Olivia stepped forward, her expression nervous but determined. "I have heard that you, Kira, know orc healing techniques. I was hoping you might be willing to teach me, or at least share some of your knowledge. In exchange, I can teach you human healing methods." Kira was stunned by the request. "You want to learn from me? Knowledge should not be wasted because of prejudice," Olivia said firmly. "If we can combine the best of both healing traditions, think of how many lives could be saved." Over the next week, Olivia stayed with them, and Kira found herself genuinely enjoying the exchange of knowledge. The young woman was sharp and eager to learn, and she offered insights into human medicine that Kira had never considered. They practiced on minor injuries and illnesses, combining techniques in ways that proved remarkably effective. Before she left, Olivia made a request that surprised Kira even more than the initial visit. "Would you be willing to continue this exchange? I could come back every few months, bring supplies you might need, and we could continue learning from each other. You would do that?" "Risk association with us?" Bennett asked. Olivia smiled. "My grandmother has taught me that courage sometimes means standing up for what is right even when it is unpopular. Besides, the knowledge I am gaining from Kira is invaluable. I would be a fool to let prejudice stop me from becoming a better healer." Kira felt tears prick her eyes at the young woman's words. "You are welcome here anytime, Olivia. It would be my honor to continue teaching you." After Olivia and Elder Miriam left, Kira and Bennett sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Did you ever imagine this?" Kira asked. "That we would have friends, both orc and human, visiting us, that people would come seeking our knowledge and company." "I imagined us surviving together," Bennett admitted, "building a life, but this having community, however small and scattered, this is better than I dared hope for." Kira leaned against him, contentment settling deep in her bones. "I spent so long believing I would always be alone, always be rejected. You changed all of that. You saw me when everyone else saw only a monster." "I saw you because you were worth seeing," Bennett said simply. "And I will keep seeing you, keep choosing you, every day for the rest of my life." Summer faded into autumn, and with it came their first real test as a couple. Bennett came down with a severe illness, fever raging so high he barely recognized Kira. She nursed him frantically, using every technique she knew from both orc and human healing traditions. For 3 terrifying days she thought she might lose him, and the fear was more devastating than anything she had ever experienced. But on the 4th day, the fever broke, and Bennett woke lucid and weak but clearly on the mend. Kira collapsed beside their bed, sobbing with relief. "Hey," Bennett rasped, his hand finding her head and stroking her hair weakly. "I am okay. I am here." "I thought you were going to die," Kira choked out. "I thought I was going to lose you and I could not bear it." "Takes more than a fever to get rid of me," he joked weakly, then his expression sobered. "But I understand, the fear of loss after finding something precious. I felt the same when you went hunting during that storm last month. This is what love is, I suppose, giving someone the power to destroy you and trusting they will not." Kira climbed carefully onto the bed beside him, mindful of his weakness. "Promise me you will not scare me like that again." "I will try my best," Bennett said, pulling her close. "But Kira, we both need to accept that life is uncertain. We could have years together or only days. What matters is that we make the most of whatever time we have." "Then I want to make every moment count," Kira said fiercely. "I want to wake up next to you every day and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want to build things with you, laugh with you, even argue with you. I want all of it, Bennett. Every messy, wonderful, terrifying bit of loving you." "You have it," he promised. "All of me for all of our days." Bennett recovered slowly, regaining his strength over the following weeks. During his convalescence, they talked about things they had avoided before: what would happen if one of them died, how to protect the surviving partner, whether they might someday want children despite the complications of raising a half-orc child in a world that would not accept them. The conversations were difficult but necessary, and Kira felt their bond strengthen through the honesty and vulnerability they shared. They were not just lovers or even just married partners, they were truly building a life together, with all the planning and compromise and mutual support that required. Winter came again, their second at the homestead, and it felt different from the first. They were prepared this time, with ample stores of food and a cabin that was truly weatherproof. More than that, they had established themselves. They were no longer desperate exiles, but a family unit with friends and connections, however unconventional. On a clear night in December, they sat outside despite the cold, wrapped in furs and looking up at the stars. "You remember this time last year?" Bennett asked. "We had just finished the cabin roof, and we were terrified it would not hold through the winter." "I remember," Kira said. "I also remember thinking that even if it did not hold, at least I was not alone, at least I had you." "You will always have me," Bennett said, then paused. "Actually, I have been thinking about something and I want your opinion." "What is it?" Throck and Nara sent word. "They found a place about 2 days north of here and are establishing their own homestead. They asked if we would be interested in creating a sort of informal alliance, visiting regularly, trading goods, supporting each other in times of need. Creating a small community of people like us who have chosen to bridge the divide between our peoples." Kira sat up straighter, her heart beginning to race. "A community? Really? It would be small at first, just the 4 of us." But Olivia mentioned that she knows of other mixed couples, human-orc, human-elf, even some who have just rejected mainstream society for various reasons. "If we established ourselves as a place where everyone is welcome regardless of species or background." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. "We could create something new," Kira finished, her mind racing with possibilities. "Not orc or human, but something in between, a place where people like us belong." "It would not be easy," Bennett warned. "We would face hostility from both sides, probably attempts to drive us out or destroy what we are building. But we would not be alone in facing it." Kira thought about Throck and Nara, about Olivia and Elder Miriam, about all the others she had met over the past year who had shown her that prejudice was not universal. She thought about the life she and Bennett had built, the love they shared, the strength they had proven. "I think we should do it," she said firmly. "I think we should try to build something better, not just for us but for everyone who comes after, so that no one else has to feel as alone and rejected as we once did." Bennett grinned and pulled her into a kiss. "Then that is what we will do." Together, as always. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. They made the journey north to visit Throck and Nara, helping them improve their homestead and discussing plans for their informal alliance. Olivia brought news of 3 other mixed couples within a week's travel, and they sent messages inviting them to a gathering in the spring. When spring arrived, it brought with it 9 people, 4 mixed couples, and Olivia herself. They gathered at the homestead Kira and Bennett had built, and for 3 days they talked, planned, and dreamed together. They discussed everything from practical matters like defense and trade to philosophical questions about what kind of community they wanted to create. By the end of the gathering, they had established basic principles. Everyone was welcome regardless of species, background, or reason for leaving mainstream society, as long as they committed to mutual respect and support. Violence and coercion were strictly forbidden. Resources would be shared in times of need. And most importantly, love in all its forms would be celebrated rather than condemned. They called themselves the Bridgers, a name suggested by Kira to represent their commitment to building bridges between peoples and cultures. It was small, barely more than a handful of families scattered across the wilderness, but it was theirs, a community built on hope rather than fear. As the founding members departed back to their own homesteads, promising to stay in contact and gather again in the autumn, Kira stood with Bennett watching them go. "We did it," she said wonderingly. "We actually created something that might last, might grow into something real." "We did," Bennett agreed. "And it started with you being brave enough to save a dying human when you had every reason to leave him to his fate." Kira thought back to that day, nearly 2 years ago now, when she had found Bennett bleeding by the roadside. If someone had told her then that her choice would lead to all of this love, family, community, purpose, she never would have believed them. "I saved you," she said softly, "but you saved me too. From loneliness, from despair, from believing I would never be good enough or worthy of love." "We saved each other," Bennett corrected gently. "And now we are saving others by showing them that another way is possible." They stood together in silence for a while, watching the last of their new friends disappear into the distance. Then Bennett turned to Kira with a mischievous smile. "So about that conversation we had about children." Kira felt her face heat, her tusks gleaming as she smiled. "What about it? I have been thinking that maybe we should stop just talking about it. Maybe we should actually try to start a family. Not right away if you are not ready, but someday. I want to raise children with you, Kira. I want to show them that love transcends differences, that family is not about blood or species but about choice and commitment." The idea terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Children had always seemed like an impossibility, something that people like her did not get to have. But looking at Bennett's hopeful face, thinking about the community they were building and the life they had created, Kira found herself believing it could work. "Yes," she said. "Not right this moment, but soon. Let us plan for it, prepare for it properly. And then yes, I want to start a family with you." Bennett whooped with joy and picked her up, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. When he set her down, they were both breathless and grinning. "I love you, Kira. My wife, my partner, my heart. I love you too, Bennett. My husband, my home, my everything." They went inside their cabin, their home hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held together. 2 years later, Kira stood in the doorway of that same cabin, watching Bennett play with their daughter in the yard outside. Little Maya was just over a year old, with her father's gray-green eyes and her mother's green skin and small tusks. She was shrieking with delight as Bennett pretended to be a monster chasing her, and the sound filled Kira's heart to bursting. The Bridgers had grown significantly in the intervening years. What had started as 9 people had expanded to nearly 40, spread across 7 homesteads within a few days' travel of each other. They gathered monthly for communal meals and celebrations, and they supported each other through hardships and joys alike. There had been challenges, of course. An attempt by Garrett and some Millwood extremists to burn out the settlement had been thwarted by the combined defense of all the Bridgers working together. Several of the families had faced rejection and threats from their former communities. And there was always the underlying fear that their fragile peace could be shattered by larger political forces. But they persevered, and slowly, word of their community spread. More mixed couples arrived, seeking refuge and acceptance. Some humans and orcs came simply because they were tired of the hatred and warfare that defined their cultures. A few even came from other species: elves, dwarves, even a half-giant and his human wife. The Bridgers were becoming something unprecedented, a true multicultural society built on mutual respect and shared values rather than homogeneity and tradition. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating, but it was also beautiful in its diversity. Kira walked out to join her family, scooping up Maya and kissing her daughter's chubby cheek. Maya giggled and grabbed at her mother's tusks, a gesture that never failed to make Kira smile. "She is getting so big," Kira said to Bennett. "Soon she will be running faster than you can catch her." "That day is coming sooner than I would like," Bennett agreed, wrapping his arms around both of them. "She is perfect, Kira, just like her mother." "She has your stubbornness," Kira teased, "and your tendency to talk to inanimate objects." "She also has your courage and your big heart," Bennett countered. "The best of both of us." They stood together as a family, watching the sun set over the land they had claimed and cultivated. In the distance, Kira could see smoke rising from Throck and Nara's homestead, and she knew that tomorrow they would all gather for the monthly community meal. "You ever regret it?" Kira asked, echoing her question from years ago. "Giving up everything you knew for this life?" Bennett's answer was the same as before, but with even more conviction. "Never. Not for a single heartbeat. You gave me everything I never knew I needed: love, purpose, family, community. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over." Kira leaned into him, their daughter cradled between them, and felt the truth of his words settle deep in her soul. She had spent so much of her life being called a beast, a monster, something less than others. The villagers who had sneered at her, the clan members who had rejected her, the countless people who had looked at her with disgust or fear, they had all tried to make her believe she was worthless. But Bennett had seen her differently. He had seen her not as a beast, but as a person worthy of love, respect, and partnership. And in seeing her that way, he had helped her see herself differently too. She was not a beast. She was Kira Varden, wife to Bennett, mother to Maya, co-founder of the Bridgers. She was a healer, a hunter, a builder of homes and communities. She was loved and cherished, respected and valued. The words beast and monster still existed in the world, still came from the mouths of those who feared what they did not understand. But those words no longer had power over her. She had built something stronger than hatred, more enduring than prejudice. She had built a life based on love, and that was worth more than all the approval of those who would never understand. Maya squirmed in her arms, and Kira set her down to toddle over to the small garden plot where she liked to play in the dirt. Bennett moved to keep a watchful eye on their daughter while Kira went inside to start preparing dinner. As she worked, she thought about how far she had come from that desperate, lonely orc girl who had thought she would never belong anywhere. She thought about the moment she had found Bennett dying by the roadside and made the choice to help him despite the risk. That single act of compassion had changed the trajectory of her entire life, had led to everything she now held dear. Tomorrow, Olivia would arrive with news from the southern settlements. Next week, they expected another family seeking to join the Bridgers. And the week after that was Maya's first birthday celebration, which would be attended by the entire community. Life was full, messy, challenging, and absolutely wonderful. Kira had found her place in the world, not by changing who she was, but by finding people who valued her as she was. And in doing so, she had helped create a place where others could do the same. As the evening meal came together, and Bennett brought Maya inside for washing before dinner, Kira looked around at the home they had built and the life they shared. This was what happiness looked like, not perfection, not ease, but love and partnership and the daily choice to build something beautiful together. Bennett came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," Kira said, turning in his embrace to face him. "About how we met, how scared I was, how certain I was that nothing good could ever happen to me. About how wrong I was and how glad I am that you proved me wrong." "We proved each other wrong," Bennett said, kissing her forehead. "I thought I was too broken to settle down, too restless to build a real life. But you showed me what I was actually searching for all along. Home is not a place, Kira. It is you." Maya toddled over and grabbed both of their legs, demanding attention with her usual infant imperious manner. They laughed and scooped her up together, a family unit complete and content. That night, after Maya was asleep and they lay in bed together, Kira thought about all the people who had called her a beast and tried to break her spirit. She thought about how she had once believed them, had once let their hatred define her worth, but she had not stayed broken. She had not accepted their judgment as truth. Instead, she had found someone who saw her clearly and loved what he saw. And together, they had built a life that proved love was stronger than hate, that understanding could bridge any divide, that being different did not mean being less. The villagers who had driven her away, the clan members who had rejected her, they were still out there somewhere, still clinging to their prejudices and their fear. But Kira was here, surrounded by family and community, living a life rich with purpose and love. She had not just survived their cruelty, she had transcended it. She had taken their worst insults and their deepest rejection, and transformed them into fuel for creating something better. They had called her a beast, tried to make her small and powerless with their words. But she had risen above their hatred, had built a community that welcomed all beings regardless of species or background. She had proven that an orc and a human could love each other, could build a family, could create a life worth living. And in doing so, she had shattered every prejudice, every assumption, every cruel limitation they had tried to impose on her. Kira fell asleep that night with Bennett's arms around her, their daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys in equal measure. She had been called a beast, but she had become so much more. She had become herself, fully and completely, and that was the greatest victory of all. The story of the tiny orc girl who fell to her knees in despair and was lifted up by human love had spread far beyond the Bridgers. It had become a legend, told and retold, inspiring others to believe that change was possible, that love could conquer hate, that being different did not mean being alone. But for Kira, it was not a legend. It was simply her life, the life she had fought for, the life she had built with Bennett, the life she would continue to nurture and protect for as long as she drew breath. And it was more than enough. It was everything.